back to North Korea for a moment, because I'll tell you, this is really, indeed, a monumental moment. It is a historic moment. This is a very big day. You know, it kind of reminded me this morning of when I was a kid, and Reagan had just come into office, and the Iranian hostages were freed. And what a moment that was, right? I mean, humor me a little bit, if you would, with a trip down memory lane, because this was that moment. This is the video from January 1981 when those hostages were freed. And, you know, you think about the challenges that the country had been through in the 1970s, certainly from an economic perspective. You think about the gas lines in the late 70s. And then you think about when Ronald Reagan came into office, he took a lot of criticism. There was a lot of finger pointing by the media and by the left saying, you know, this guy's crazy. He's nothing but an actor. He'll never get anything done. And if you think about the similarities between then and now, there are a few. Now, granted, two very different people, different styles, but nonetheless, both of them had a pretty firm hand when it came to dealing with some of these international issues. And you think of the success that Reagan was able to achieve with the Soviet Union and the dissolving of that, opening up East Germany, and you think about take down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev, and there was so much packed into his 8 years that helped our country internationally, that helped our country domestically with our economy. And I guess the question is, could we be in store for another great time in American history? Here with a closer look at the significance of what we're all witnessing right here and now. Presidential historian, the author of The Iran Crisis, Doug Wead. Doug, so good to see you. Thank you for being here. I mean, it really is. It's a big deal what's happening. And, you know, I really realize there's lots of other things going on. And, you know, we can save Stormy Daniels perhaps for another time in the show. But let's just focus on the significance of what is going on with these detainees from North Korea coming back to the U.S., with us getting out of the Iran deal. What does it signal to you, Doug?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It shows American strength, and it shows how easily it could have been turned around. We were just paralyzed in self-doubt and weakness. Carter himself, in one of his speeches, said he was puzzled by it. He said there's a great malaise that has taken over the country. And I had the privilege of interviewing Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan during that period. And Reagan it wasn't bluff. He was just strong. And the Iranians anticipated what might happen, and they let him go. Bullies respond to strength. They're provoked by weakness.
So do you think that was a mistake when you look back and you know, history will be the judge, but the last 8 years under the Obama administration, there was this sense that, you know, well, we could just get along with everyone and they would go away and do the right thing. And we found that that was not the case. That's not what actually happened. And now there's a very different feeling. And I think the world is recognizing this different feeling. So walk this out, assuming that the president is able to stay on course with the success that he's had policy-wise thus far. What will it mean for his legacy? What does it mean for President Obama's?
It's a high-wire act because it could go wrong, because what Trump has done, he's freed himself from the shackles of the media. Even Reagan was bound somewhat by the media. He's got Twitter. There's some new technology. There's some new room for him to maneuver. But I tell my kids, Trish, when Reagan would make a decision, I would think, wow, that's what I would have done. I can't believe he's doing that. Yeah. But when Trump makes a decision, I say, wow, I never would have done that. But he's right. But I never would have done that.
Right, so because there's a lot at stake. It's chancy. It's risky. And by the way, you know, if the Europeans and the rest of our allies don't go along with this, we could still be in a situation where Iran is able to gain nuclear power before you know it. And they've got the economic wherewithal to do it, because if we're the only ones signing on to the sanctions, I don't know if it's going to have as much juice.
If Trump allows them to get the nuclear weapon, and that's the catch. And we've been kind of buffaloed into this whole idea that CNN and some of these networks and their panels are hyperventilating, and oxygen-deprived pundits are just choking because
they got like 12 of them on set at one time, hyperventilating together.
We've broken our deal. You can't trust our word. But it wasn't a deal. It was, to use Obama's White House's own words, it was an arrangement. It was an agreement, non-binding, to use the White House words. So this wasn't our deal. The American people weren't consulted. It was never voted on in the U.S. Senate. And the lesson for European countries is, don't make a deal with some bully in the White House. Make a deal with the American people. If you want a treaty, learn the American Constitution. It must go to the Senate and be ratified. Advice and consent. It's no longer a president and the news media running roughshod over the American people.
Doug, let me also ask you about another big story today, and that's the nominee for the CIA, head of the CIA. She's obviously up against a lot of foes there. They're critical of her treatment of detainees post 9/11. Have you ever seen a Congress that is so resistant to appointees? I mean, they gave Mike Pompeo a difficult time. The guy had already been to North Korea and back, and it was challenging for him to get in as Secretary of State. We're looking at a real challenge for the new head of the CIA, should she be appointed. How unusual is this to you as a historian?
Well, it's happened all through history. We have this sort of petty thing, but usually it's exposed as being petty. The problem today is they have news media coverage and political cover, the Democrats in this case, and they know it. But this may be backfiring on them. The CIA, the agency itself, is suffering under this whole idea of the politicization of these agencies. They don't want to go through what the FBI went through. I think this is a mistake. This is the Democrats sending a signal to the CIA. You have to cheat on our side or you won't be approved, even if you're committed to your agency and your objective. No longer objectivity. You've got to be on our side, like the people that rose to the top of the FBI.
And look, can I just say, I mean, someone who's tough on terror, we want our CIA really tough on terror. In fact, I don't even want to know about everything they do, Doug, to deal with terror. But I want to know that they're doing something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that they're tough. And that's the lesson we learn from Iran. You go some places that journalists never go, Trish, but about a year and a half ago, we did a segment where we talked about all this criticism that Trump was being too provocative. He was going to trigger a nuclear war. But predator responds to toughness. They're provoked by weakness.
You know,
so this
I
has
am
been
glad
a great
that you
moment.
brought that up, Doug, because I have a killer team, and they happen to have that handy. So let's run that for the viewers so they can see just exactly what it is that you said. Here we go, Doug Wead.
He understands communism, and historically, communism is like a wild animal. It senses weakness. Weakness provokes it. It backs down from noise and bluster, but it attacks weakness. And that was true with Vienna and Kennedy and brought us to the brink of a nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it's been true throughout history. Reagan stood tough. It scared everybody, but he stood tough, and the communists backed down.
So that was last August.
Yeah.
That was quite a while ago. And you were making the point back then that there was a very different feel to things right now. And there's some similarities between Reagan and Trump. And it comes from that sense of strength that both of them feel about this country, and that strength gets put out to the rest of the world, which makes it a little tough to pull one over on us right now.
That's right, and that was a very lonely position then, but in a way Trump is freed because he doesn't have to please the leftist media, he's freed to do what he thinks is right, what he believes to be right. And that's a freedom no president has had up to this point. But as we said earlier, that's a high wire act. They could take him down.
No,
they're going to try to take him down.
They could take him, and it's not just he's free from the media, he's free from the lobbyists as well. And he's free from corporate interests and all the money that had been poured into Iran to try and make an economy out of Iran. He doesn't have to worry about that. So it's got to be a good feeling in some ways, although I don't envy him at all, that's for sure. All right, Doug, thank you. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Trish. Good to see you.